Alrighty, well, I think we can go ahead and get moving here. Hello, everybody. Thanks for jumping on today. Happy Friday. I am not Pam. I am Sean Costello. I'm a part of the COTE team here in Grand Rapids. We've also got Robert Ferguson on. If you want to, yeah, introduce yourself. Welcome, everybody, to, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Robert.
Oh, I was just saying thank you, Sean, for having me here and helping be a leader in our COTE committee here.
Glad to have you. Well, welcome everybody to the first Framework Friday. Today, the session is meant to be kind of an informal discussion, but talk about the Design for Excellence through the Honor Awards for 2023. There's a couple parts of the Honor or the Design Excellence Awards that AIA has kind of like focused on. So we're trying to just offer our insight and share kind of like what we know, but today is really kind of more of a quick general presentation, talk about the Design for Excellence, and then it's really Q&A. And if you have any questions about how your firm can, look at energy, water, resources, or any of the other design excellence strategies, we're here to kind of offer our expertise and any support that AIA could be giving to you all. So like I was kind of talking about, the 10 principles of design excellence, AIA Grand Rapids has kind of focused on 3 primarily to have metrics within the honor award submission for 2023. They've focused on design for energy, design for resources, and design for water. And I think in 2023, they're actually going to ask for submissions or metrics for 2 of these out of the 3. So asking to provide, either an EUI, a baseline for water, or some CO2 equivalent information about the project that you're submitting. Today, we're going to primarily focus on design for energy. And what that means, try to break down a little bit what the design for excellence is asking for and what the metrics are that you can be contributing to your honor award submission. So the design for energy really focuses on EUIs, kind of the base metric, which is energy use intensity, which we'll talk about in a second. But there's some other parts and strategies that they'd also like you to inform the group on, and that includes passive design strategies, how your building performs better than code minimums, or if you have a net zero energy or net zero carbon approach. In addition to that, any type of renewable energy that the project might utilize. And then performance over the lifetime. So you can definitely have a predicted EUI, but it would be great to have any real numbers. I mean, that's kind of gravy on top of the submission. So like I was saying, really what AIA is looking for is, the energy metrics and how you can share those with actually like design strategies. That's kind of really important piece of the whole energy piece or metric of the Design Excellence Awards. Like I was talking about, the biggest one is the EUI or the predicted energy use, the PEUI is predominantly probably what you would include in your award submission. There's a lot of ways to actually figure out what your PEUI is. There's a ton of softwares that focus on that. If you have a question about how to, maybe utilize the best software, there's a couple on here that we've kind of pulled out that have, some really ease of use, but really detailed analysis, or not so easy to use, but have like a really detailed analysis. So there's kind of a whole litany. I think, Robert, you use Cove Tool, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah, we use Fira, but we've kind of used the whole litany of tools. So if you have questions about that and how you're going to get your PEUI for your energy metrics, we definitely can answer any questions you have. And then, of course, quick plug for 2030. 2030, taking on the challenge is a great way to also track your EUI or your PEUI. Actually, if you upload your project and give kind of the basic background and criteria for the project, it will actually spit out a EUI for you. It's not always the most accurate, but at least you'd be able to track energy. You can kind of see here that it's showing that you're 46% below baseline. So it actually gives you some pretty good metrics that you could use for your award submission if you're a part of the 2030 challenge. So another great resource. And if you have any questions about that, Robert and I are happy to answer stuff on the 2030 challenge. And then kind of the gravy on top of, or extra points, if you will, for your award submission. If you can show how your project actually works or performs better than code minimums, that's always a great thing to show. It says that you've been looking at the code minimums and you're trying to improve upon that, not just meeting the basic criteria for that. And then also talking about any passive design strategies that you might have employed during the course of your project and how you've reached that predicted energy use. So I'm going to hand it over to Robert real quick, and he's going to talk actually about his award submission last year and kind of give you some insight as to some things that might help you with your award submission for 2023.
Thank you, Sean. And thank you all for gathering here today virtually. Last year, Progressive AE submitted for AIA Grand Rapids Building Award, Flexco Manufacturing, a manufacturer of conveying system parts for the logistics and material handling industry. That's a part of a global manufacturing organization. They had been operating for over 100 years out of a series of smaller facilities that sort of grew organically over time, but were in different locations on a business campus, and we're seeking to pull everybody together into one facility. So this manufacturing and office project included 200,000 square feet of manufacturing space and 88,000 square feet over 2 stories of office space. And that they had initially a series of goals that really aligned well with some of the principles of framework for design excellence around sort of human-centered design, and that led into an understanding that equitable approach to the design of the facility and how employees would be working there was a big driver for them. Also, the ability to take their engineering and research and design groups and allow them to work more effectively between their engineering offices, their R&D lab, and the manufacturing floor, and then build a culture of commitment and comprehensive inclusiveness by ensuring that if you're an employee there, no matter how long you've been there, some of them have been there for 40 years plus, or what your level of engagement within the office or manufacturing floor is, everyone had access to the same amenities. Everyone came in through the same front door, and everyone had the ability to support a more sustainable time while they were at the facility, whether it be wellness and access to exercise programs and gym and showering facilities, or the ability to step outside into a semi-conditioned outdoor space, or ensuring that everyone had access to daylight and views within the facility. You can see here some of the solutions that they were looking for within the facility, and this is what we wrote about in our submission. So you're seeing content that's straight from our submission deck for the project, telling the story of why the building is designed the way that it is. Yep, great intuition,
Sorry,
Sean.
didn't mean to.
No, that was
Press the wrong
perfect.
button.
No. If you go to the next slide, I think we're ready for that. So the main driving force for them was one, they finally got to be under one roof, but by doing so, they wanted to make sure that everybody entered in. So we spoke to the fact that there was a single entry, and that that was a strategy that supported the idea that no matter who you are, engaging visitor or employee or family member of employee, you had the same experience coming into the facility. And that drove a lot of the planning. The passive side of things for us, we located the office block on the north side, and then went to a strategy of metal panel and curtain wall, insulated metal panel and curtain wall for the office envelope, that allowed, by folding the facade, an ability to have completely indirect daylight during normal, I would say 7 o'clock to 7 o'clock operating hours for the office space, and ensuring that whether it was a break space, a meeting space, or open work environment, everyone had daylight and views. Even if the some of the spaces were 100 feet away, they were elevated from the floor level and had a direct connection to the outside. So we spoke to that that planning strategy that was embraced by the design team through the client's wishes within the project. There was an optimization relative to the building structural system. The project was unique for Progressive AE in the fact that our client was Pioneer Construction, and we were under contract with them. So that allowed us to work very closely with their building structure supplier to understand what are the optimized sizes for building structure, and how could we work within that, both from a cost perspective, but from an efficiency of material perspective. And that led to a 50-foot by 50-foot structural frame, which is quite big. But over the size of a facility like this, the economies of scale proved out that was the best direction to go. And then unique to the project, but understanding as a contractor that they were building a facility for a long life of service for their client, Pioneer recommended that we do things like in-floor heating, which would allow for a lower temperature of water to be distributed to warm up that slab, versus something that wasn't in-floor radiant. So little wins along the way. We even studied passive strategies like self-shading of the curtain wall with extended mullion frames, or even doing a frit study on the curtain wall glazing itself. Ultimately, even though Pioneer and Progressive supported the idea of the extensions for the curtain wall framing for shading, one of the key decision makers for the client said he just didn't like the look of it, and it reminded him of louvers on the back of a Trans Am. So, you can bring all of the information you possibly can to a client, and as you inform them with the reasons why these passive strategies are beneficial, they too understand the impact of aesthetics on buildings. Sean, if you want to go to the next slide. So there's two slides here. One is our building as it's constructed today. Progressive AE provided architecture and interior design and structural design for the project. Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, low voltage, fire alarm, fire suppression, all of that was provided by trade contractors working with Pioneer. So we had limited impact on sort of recommendations for systems, but we were tracking through Cove tool information within the project as we moved along. So where we could control things such as the U value or insulative value of assemblies, and advocating for an inch or two more of insulation than maybe the minimum required, we could prove out what was driving the performance of the building. So this slide shows the predicted energy use intensity for the office portion of the building. So we've isolated that from the whole of the project, and where the primary source of their loads are. The PEUI of just under 32 kilobTUs per square foot per year for the facility was achieved by some pretty standard uses of 3-inch insulated metal panel and clear insulated glazing units. The next slide shows what it would be if we had installed 20,000 square feet, so half of the office roof area, with monosilicone photovoltaic system. And while it's not installed, this study did show the opportunity that in the future, should the client want to invest in that, they could drop their building closer to being a net zero facility. My sense is if they went to maybe 40,000 square feet of PV on the roof, they might achieve that net zero operation with the offsets from the photovoltaics. The building's infrastructure spaces are sized to receive the equipment for a PV system of this size. We just haven't encouraged them enough to invest in implementation of that.
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, we do our part to equip them with the power of the knowledge of the metrics and what it means for them. And I think that's a significant first step that we can provide clients on the potential of their facilities to impact their operations in the long term. So that's Flexco. We did not include these last two slides from Cove Tool in our submissions in our submittal package for awards next year. Obviously, we certainly will, because we think it helps tell the story of what we're studying and what we're able to do with the built environment that our clients are asking us to develop for them.
Hey, Robert, I think I asked this question before we talked about it. Did you include a predicted energy use or an actual energy use metric for your award submission?
We, in the content from 2022, we don't believe we did, but
Or
I'm going to
both?
double check right now. May have been predicted only.
While Robert's grabbing that, does anybody have any questions about award submissions or design strategies, energy in general?
Maybe I could ask a nuts and bolts question, Rob. Who on your team was actually working through the Cove tool itself as the design team was kind of testing different options and solutions?
Yeah, I was.
Okay.
So my role in our firm is design architect. So we're on the edge of recommending where opacity happens, where transparency happens, where systems are being brought to the building, and making those recommendations with the client. Our project architects on the technical side of stuff will help us integrate with other disciplines. In a normal setting where we would have them alongside with us before we start schematic design and massing, we would put the building as a series of areas, orientations, and percentages into Cove Tool, and then start out with a baseline of what's a pretty typical mechanical system for the building, and some typical thermal values for the assemblies, and then play around with things from that standpoint first to get sort of that perspective of things, and then we'll layer into it some of the actualities of the site and the users as we choose where to implement those envelope materials and systems.
Megan, are you guys in your firm thinking about taking the plunge with like an energy modeling software or something like that?
Always, yeah, and we always end up working with somebody else, and we don't tend to do it ourselves. And so we are just on the fence on how much to invest in learning systems. That's why I'm going like zeroing in on the nuts and bolts side of it. Yeah, I took a screenshot of this one, Sean.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's pretty well, I mean, he's worked kind of internationally and at some pretty impressive firms doing this work. And he like kind of took a look at our systems and gave some recommendations. And even he was a little bit torn with a small firm, like how much you invest in what system. And so he was like, well, keep doing what you're doing, obviously innately the decisions you're making, how they affect, especially with our residential work, the orientation and daylighting and all of that kind of stuff. We make really smart decisions, but we don't back up our residential decisions with data. So I'm kind of thinking on the residential side too, how much we want to.
There's actually a great software called BOPT. It's like I would call it like the Nintendo 64 of like energy modeling software, because it's just so basic and like kind of pixelated, but it's a very robust energy software, and you can do multiple strategies. And literally you just like kind of draw a general box of what a house looks like. And it just asks you like, is it a gabled roof? How many doors do you have? How many windows? Like extremely basic stuff. And then like you get into the more nuts and bolts, and it's like, how much insulation do you have? Yada, 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 heat pump, all that stuff. And you can get some really good analysis from it and not like have to learn how to do energy modeling, so that's a really good tool, and it's free. And yeah, it's a great like all around tool. The biggest drawback is it's really just for residential clients, so it's not really used commercially a lot.
I see. Yeah.
But it's great for residential projects.
Mm-hmm.
I put a link to the NREL's page.
Oh yeah.
In our chat here.
Nice. Yes. Perfect.
Hey, sorry for joining late. I feel a little weird just jumping in here.
No problem.
More of these, but I got a question. So we've been using, I've used a lot of Sapphira in the past and Fove and those, but lately Insight has been a pretty useful tool as Megan, you look for things that are cost effective. It's free. At least free if you have the Revit package and the rest of the Autodesk.
I think we did look into that. Is that the one that comes? Is it like a plugin, or is it It's a
plugin.
Autodesk? It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you plug it in with it, and then it's web based. It works out pretty nice for some of the high level. It just depends at every level of what you're trying to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Rob, have you played with that at all? Or
so it's interesting of the things that are on the page here. I would say that Sapphira, Cove Tool, and Autodesk Insight are where we played. There's a renewed interest in Insight in the last 6 or 8 months with our building information team. And there's some research and development going into that, as well as preparing our models to better integrate with TallyCat on the embodied carbon side of things.
Sure.
We're kind of excited about what Insight has in store.
Mm-hmm.
Just on Cove,
the efficiency of going back and forth within parent platforms like Autodesk is really attractive.
Cove is just starting to price themselves out of use.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah,
we just actually started using Cove Tool. We just got our first small set of licenses for our work, so we're trying to. I do appreciate your. I actually started out too with our mechanical team was using it for some of their energy modeling. So kind of piggybacking that so we could kind of leverage both as we worked into it. But I do appreciate your comments, Robert, about we're trying to push everybody into just like, don't go any, just make a mass and just take a peek at it. Oh, what is it doing? Like, don't worry about like getting all cute with it. Let's just start with the basics of it. So it's really funny to find just getting people to just like pull back the reins to not get too crazy with it. Like let's take some basic ideas to study this first. So I appreciated your comments on that.
We find that if the platform is pretty easy for other disciplines to engage, we're able to get the engineers in pretty quickly. And that was the one thing about Cove tool, for at least for our group, was they could step in within 15 minutes, have something that we can react to without having to do a lot.
Yeah.
I do feel like what I've seen of it, like the graphics and it just feels more intuitive than some. But
I feel like it's like the Google Translate for those that are trying to learn the language of speaking.
Yeah.
You know,
That's a good way to put
buildings
it.
in this way. And that Autodesk Insight and Sapphira have, they're an F1 race car that in the right hands could maybe really, really optimize and change the way we do things.
Yeah, so this is Insight, and it's pretty decent. I mean, we just exported our model straight out of it and didn't really change anything, and it already gave us like our EUI. There we go, EUI.
22 point.
Yeah. So, but you can go in here and kind of change all the typicals in terms of insulation and stuff. What's nice about this though is it does do like a optimization. So it'll kind of run the best case values. So for like window glazing, in our BIM model, I think we had something pumped in. It says as modded value. I don't remember what that was, but it said, if you go to double clear or triple clear, like there's kind of like the line of regression. So for like really quick energy modeling, like this is super easy, and it's, packed into Revit. So it's a pretty good software to use. It just depends on. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, it kind of depends on what you want to get out of it.
I'm like, now I have a train. Poorly timed, right as I was going to say something. I think trade. We suffer from just a very typical small office problem of we all do all the things, and so we don't have an architect, project manager, design department. We are all of those things for all of our projects. Some people focus on some more than others, and it's a pretty deliberate decision on our part. But what it means is, how do you then, who does this and how do we implement? And so that's partly why we've on our only tackled it on larger projects that end up having another consultant involved already. And then we're not working as early in it as we'd like. We do make a lot of decisions based on the microclimate of our sites. Like that's pretty important to our work, but man, it's just a hard thing when like that's our office structure. We don't have in-house engineering. Yeah. Just a comment more than a question. Not really a complaint, maybe.
Yeah.
I know that Matt Van Sweden and I have talked about, what would it mean for the Committee on the Environment Committee to embrace the idea of taking those skill sets and then helping each other in a way that through membership with AIAGR, it could be helpful.
Yeah, I've talked to Matt about that too.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Matt's talked to everybody about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be an implementer.
Definitely. Yep. Exactly. So, the, it's, I think it's one of the ways that, as we've, committed to membership within the AIA, we think about the practice of architecture collectively and what the public is asking us to do. It would probably be a good idea to help each other.
Yeah, and we may be in
Invest in
competition
that.
with each other, but this is like a rising tide situation, and like literally, the climate change affects all of us. So I agree. Yeah.
I just learned this week that Galveston, Texas is like incredibly impacted by Antarctic ice melting. I had no idea that was a thing, but so far away.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Megan, we kind of struggle with that too. We've been trying to, and along with a lot of other like more technical things, like even Revit too. So like we've really been trying to focus on knowledge sharing, because some of us know like energy modeling really well, and some of us don't, and trying to like share that within our firm, and like dedicating time to that has been kind of helpful. But yeah, I mean, luckily we do have like engineering in-house, so it's a little easier to have that discussion later on without having to hire a consultant. But yeah, I think it's kind of like the small firm struggle for sure, unless you have somebody that can, constantly be able to run energy models or what have you.
We found
Question on the energy models, and maybe this is for you, Rob, but in-house we do run energy models. We have the team. It's not always to the benefit. Sometimes it is. When we're running parallel Insight and IES, are you seeing similarities between the, let's call it the early model, dumb architects model, and the more informed engineers model? Are you seeing huge deviances between the two, or is Insight providing a pretty decent first guess?
I don't have enough experience specifically to know that. I would anticipate that there's probably going to be, we haven't at the conceptual or schematic level, we haven't done a one-to-one comparison.
Okay, we've only done a few.
We need to do, yeah.
I feel pretty confident. It gives me a decent amount of reassurance that using the baseline assumptions and not messing with any of the factors, you can tweak it all you want. It's junk in, junk out, but using some of the assumptions, it comes out pretty good.
It's encouraging.
Yeah, we've had some successes on it where we were using Sapphira, but it got really close, to the point that we were, I think, only like a half a kBTU off of actual energy data, which like,
That's pretty good.
yeah, predicted energy use is, based upon 30 years of climatized data, right? So, your law of averages like automatically makes 1 year could be off majorly. So I feel like the energy modeling is pretty sophisticated nowadays, pretty close, based upon those like assumptions, the black box, if you will.
Yeah, I'd be cool with 20%.
Yeah, right.
Half a kBTU is pretty good.
Yeah,
it's pretty dialed in. Just in service of helping everyone. I agree. I think I'm just curious of those kinds of lessons learned or anything. How I can help too.
Yeah, I think the intent with these Framework Fridays is kind of to continue them. And if you do have like questions in your firm about, how am I calculating water use intensity? Like, let's talk about it. Cause I think everybody's kind of in that boat and trying to figure it out. So yeah, we can talk about best practices and like things like this, like we were talking about energy software. So that's really the value that we're trying to provide as a COTE group to to everyone in the AIA chapter. Well, fantastic. Does anybody have any other questions or questions about 2030 or anything like that? Again, I think award submissions, they're going to ask for, I think, 2 of the 3 criteria. So it'll be water use intensity, energy use intensity, and then materials and resources, which is some sort of CO2 equivalent. So those are kind of the 3 metrics that are going to be asked for. And those are all relatively, I think maybe energy is probably the hardest one to find sometimes. The next one, I think we're going to be talking about, are we talking about water use intensity? Is that right, Robert?
Yes.
Awesome. Sorry.
To reach for some water. Yes. Yeah. I'm going to use it intensely here right now for my throat. Yeah. You know, especially for those of us practicing on projects here in Michigan, obviously, you know, water is incredibly important. And, you know, the conversation I had with my teenagers recently was, sure, you can go away for school, but based on climate change, I think you're going to find that Michigan is a really great place to live for the next 50, 60 years. As long as we can, you know, continue to care for the abundance of water that we have in a responsible manner. So I am looking forward to looking at that piece. I hope to share a little bit of information about rainwater harvesting and reuse on some projects that we're studying currently in the area.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I moved from Southern California, where I practiced for almost 20 years, and yeah, coming to Michigan and like looking at like the natural disaster, like basically level chart across the country, and it's like Michigan's a pretty good spot. Like,
That's right.
And but talking about water here is I find it funny because our owners don't even like, they're like, oh, we gotta treat the water, and it's like. And I work with GMB. We do predominantly K-12 work, so we're working with like school districts and stuff. And it's really interesting because everyone's just like, yeah, there's lots of water, we're good. And I'm like, yeah, but that's the point. We need to keep it around.
People in Michigan are just kind of like, water, who cares? We got water.
We're surrounded by it. It's great.
Yeah.
One other question I had, Robert, was what was we're also, as we start we're trying to really focus more on everybody getting just like initial energy modeling done. What was you mentioned the software, we're also looking at the embodied carbon piece of it. We're trying to shift the conversations from how we set up building systems, like specifically like structural systems. Like everyone's set on like, it needs to be block. We got to do it this way. It's how we've always done it. So we're trying to like look at that and flip that on its head and look at it differently too. And I wasn't sure, you had mentioned the embodied carbon software.
Yeah. So probably two to 3 months ago, we downloaded the beta version of TallyCat.
Okay.
Which is from EC3. Kieran Timberlake had been a part of developing.
That's right.
And it's to Kevin's point earlier, you know, if you're building information modeling content in Revit has good information about the materials and systems, TallyCat very quickly quantifies it for you and kicks it out into a spreadsheet that you can start to show the embodied side. So we've got, you know, with Cove Tool and others on the energy use intensity, the operational carbon, but TallyCat, from building transparency.
That's right, building transparency.
Super easy to get into. And then that just starts a whole nother conversation around material sourcing and localization and what is appropriate for you know, a building's system, and so that we don't get caught up in the fads of things like, oh yeah, you know, it's Michigan, it's timber history, so we got to do everything out of CLT, or, you know, Sometimes, yeah, sometimes, but we also have winter here and water.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Tallycat, we're just dipping our toe into, we're probably 3 years behind the Cove tool embodied or operational energy side of stuff, but the whole collective that we're trying to pull forward into projects and the way that we talk about them and the way that we recommend our solutions to clients is holistically around carbon on both sides. If we do that
And this
well enough,
works.
then we can get into life cycle analysis too. But steps, just
Yeah, for sure.
thinking in the next 25 years, what can we accomplish?
This works with
Great.
Revit, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Nice.
super easy.
Awesome. No, appreciate it.
Mhm.
I feel like I've come across some of those and then I forget, like, it's buried in, like, there's subsets of things, and like somebody
Yeah.
makes a software and I'm like, I heard a Tallycat. I don't remember
Well, and this
from
one
what.
bounced
you-
around a bit too, but now it's
Yeah.
at this version, it's hosted with buildingtransparency.org.
Okay.
I find I can't remember which one was recommended to use or not recommended. Like, that was my,
Yeah.
Sounds like picking a restaurant.
yeah.
I've heard of that one.
Don't
Now I
go
can't
there.
remember.
Well, we can also share this quick presentation and maybe drop some of the software recommendations on there too, for everybody, so you can remember in the future.
Sweet. Appreciate it. Appreciate the conversation.
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. This is like the most engagement we've had in a COTE presentation, so this is awesome. Great to see. And look forward to the next conversation. So I think we're meeting again in 2 weeks, talk about water. Should be a great conversation. Matt will be here, and so I think Pam will be here too. So
Thank you,
Awesome.
Sean, and
Appreciate-
thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
thank you. Have a great
Have a
rest
good
of your
weekend.
week. Yeah. See you
Bye.
guys.
Later.